Hi and welcome to this video. I'm super excited that you want to see how you can deliver your SAP integration better with Figaf. So we will cover how to set up a full end-to-end DevOps process with the Figaf tool, making it easier for you to test, document, run, develop all your SAP integration. So this is the goal of the course, showing you how you can do this, install it on your system and be able to use it there. So we will first talk about how you can run Figaf. We will talk about how you connect to integration suite or cloud integration, which is the limit for this. We will talk about your landscape. We will talk about how you can create test cases, how you can improve Groovy development of UI flows, transports, how you can improve, and how you can actually monitor all of this. So all in all, a full end-to-end DevOps process. So let's see how long time it takes. My idea is to keep this at a pace that would allow you to pause the video, set it up for your systems, so you can actually do this in parallel and thereby get the understanding about how this actually works in your landscape. Because it's one thing to just set it up and see me set it up. The other thing is to actually try it on your system and understand how this actually behaves. So why Figaf? It's one tool that enables you to do all of these different processes. So a lot of all the other tools and processes in place is separated, and you need to understand all of them, and then you need to put all of this link together. In the Figaf, we have combined all of this into one box, making it a lot easier for you to handle the full end-to-end governance process. And when we talk about Figaf Devops, there's a lot of components in this. It's about testing, it's about DevOps. We'll see all of these in action. The only thing we'll not see is a repository. We can connect to a Git repository where you can have all of your integration in and use that also as a development source. There are some separate videos for that, and I think that is a little more advanced topic to use the Git repository. We'll also talk about where you can run it, and in general our main focus is that you run it in BTP Cloud Foundry, because it is just so much easier. You have access, or in most cases you would have access to deploy and run applications there. You can also run it in hyperscalers, all Linux, Windows if you have a laptop, and it connects to SAP PIPO, cloud integration and API management. So we'll only today just cover the cloud integration part, but bear in mind that a lot of all the things about testing, about DevOps, also apply to the PIPO platform. And there, if you have a large landscape and are doing a lot of changes, this can also be really a large impact. But that's a different story. Right now, I just want to focus on getting you to work with cloud integrations. We also have a lot of migrations. What license should you choose? For this, I would normally just recommend that you sign up for the trial license. If you are doing a migration, you can also take the migration edition. That will give you a little longer trial, and then hopefully we get you to get your company to say, okay, it is a good idea. We want the full license of Figaf. We start at €1,000 a month to run the tool and give you all of these different benefits. Okay, there's different editions, so it's not. Okay, so there's, as we talked about, there's different places where you can run the lab, run Figaf. A good place, well, if you're doing a proof of concept, so right now, setting it up in your laptop would also be a good way, because it is only you that would need this, and there you can see what it will work like. We obviously recommend that you deploy it in BTP Cloud Foundry, because there you get user management, easy access to deployment, etc. The other option is that if you have a server somewhere where you can run it with a separate database, that is by far a better alternative than the laptop. But these two are kind of the same. And we do have, if you want to try out Figaf, we have a cloud, and I think this is the one we will be trying out today. And the benefit of this one is that it will allow you to communicate with your team circuits here. This is what you want. This is what you want. If you want to get started with this, you go to figaf.com/devops, and then you get started. And there's some help sites where you can create tickets. A little on the architecture maybe. So we do have. So ideally, you will run it in Cloud Foundry. It needs a Postgres database. It will connect to your PIPO system using Cloud Connector, and then you can connect to multiple integration suite, Cloud Foundry, Neo, CPI systems. BTP is, I think, the best for most organizations. You have cloud credits, but I would love to show you also the demo here, but it just takes a little longer to deploy these things, and there's a really good guide for that that we'll also go into. Standalone deployment, but actually let's just get started. So license-wise, we are using the number of ICOs, proxies, or iFlows, and it only counts when you start using these things. Some recommendation for standalone deployment. Okay, so let's get started. So we want to get a Figaf instance, so we'll run here on figaf.com, and what we will then do is we will start a free trial. Daniel and plus +3. So just a promo here. Sign me up, and we will select the cloud. It actually works a lot the same way, so we should now get an email for this. Let me check this. Okay, so now we got an email to reset the password in the app, and we'll find a password. Reset password, and then you need to log in. Copy email address. So now we have logged in. If we have run this on our local system, so on here we will also get a link to the Figaf get started page here. So here's the download page. What you'll do is you'll need to download this jar file, and then you will put it in a folder on your computer. Figaf demo here. And then you can create a bat file. Where you then just say, okay, this is the Java I have, and this is the file that I want to use for. Then you run it up. You log in with a username, password, and you can also see this should also be here. On the configuration, go to the localhost, and then you log in, and then you will actually see the same thing. Then you would also get a license key. You go to the license tab here, and here you will add a license, but because we're using in the cloud, it already has this license and the link here, so no need to do this. Okay, so if you want to create more users, you can go here and you can create new users, so you can add your team members to this organization. So they would also be able to see what is going on. Okay, first off is we need to obviously to connect this to our cloud integration systems. And to do that, we will select cloud integration. we do have a number of ways. So we'll call it dev integration suite or cloud integration, and then we'll need to open here our cloud integration here. We will copy this URL here to the link here, and then we need to say, okay, how do we want to connect? If you have an S user without API universal ID for integration suite, this will be the easiest approach. If you're using a new system, you can use the S user, enter your username and password, and you will be good to go. But we do not have that option because it is integration suite here, and I guess cloud integration is anyway coming right now. So first is we need to create an API key for API, and you can obviously read to create these service keys here. So we will go here to our BTP cockpit. Under instances and subscription, we will go and create a new service process integration runtime. And process integration runtime here, we will select the API, understand it, dev space, and here you'll obviously give it a name, Figaf API, or whatever you need to use, so you can find it back later. For this, we need to have the administrator, integration developer, and a business expert. It uses client credentials. We will then create it. And this normally takes a little while. Also know we need to create the messaging key, so let's just do that at the same time while it is creating. So we'll then select the message flow plan. We will select it. We'll add here MSG message. We can say we also want to use the password as an option. We can then add all of the different, if we're using multiple different roles when we're sending messages, this is for the test tool, then you can add them to this setup here. And say like create. So now we have created 2 keys, and now okay, one is here the Figaf API, so let's open this one. More details on it, and here we can select create a service key. Not really sure why, yeah. So you can obviously have multiple keys here. What you'll do is we will view this one once it's being created. We will just say copy JSON, go back to the Figaf tool, insert it here and select pass. And then we need to do the same thing for the public API or for the message API. Key. And here it fetches all of the relevant information that we need from this setup. So it says it's okay. We just select pass and we select go. So now we have this done. Now this comes the little more tricky part. Now we need to set up a custom identity provider. So we do in Figaf need some access to some of the web APIs that is only published via the web. And therefore we need to have an identity provider that would give us this. So there's a good guide for setting this up here, but let me just show you what this looks like. So the first thing is we need to go to our trust configuration here. Here we can see all the custom identity providers that you have, and we can see we have connected quite a bit to these integrations here. So we will open it here in the browser. And we need this URL here to be fetched. And we will add it here. Done. This is where, when you're logging in, you need to go to this URL or use it as a part of the redirect. The other is I'm getting an entity description, and to do that I will then say like update new touch configuration here. I will add this number 6 entity description. It's not the sample partner. Figaf browsing. It just had the ordinary key. You need to deselect it for a user, because then otherwise everybody will be prompted for this, and we do not want users to log in via this. So now it is created, so it should be Figaf Graverson here. We need to go into the role mapping here, and here we need to create some roles or connect some roles. So with this we need to say, okay, for this user there is a auth group developer. Is it called? So PI administrator. So PI administrator should be given if there's an attribute called groups that is called admin. And we need to do the same for PI integration developer, groups, admin. And the last one is business expert. We may not need this business expert, but we just add it anyway, just to make sure, because we've always done that. So there could be some changes, so it's easier just to have it. So let's just send like next. And now we have actually connected this to our landscape. And it says here, if you want to explore the landscape, I can set up a landscape for you. This is by far the easiest. Now we'll create a sample landscape for it, and we can select some packages. So if you have a large tenant, you do not want to collect all of the different packages that you have in this tenant. So let's just select one of these. So it's easier just to select 3 and use them for synchronization. Otherwise, all of them will be synchronized, making the process a little more complicated. So now we have connected to our cloud, a new magic can begin. We can press synchronize here. We'll only synchronize this package. We could obviously synchronize everything, but obviously that would take a little longer to run and process. Because we only have one, it is pretty simple to see all the details. So now we have this package in the Figaf system, making it easy for us to govern and translate and manage this setup. So let me also show you for a Neo tenant, because actually it makes it easier if we need to do transports also. So we'll create a new tenant. We will create it QA Neo, and let me just find the URL for it. So here we have this Neo tenant, and we will go here, we'll add it. So now it says here it's Neo, I know that. And what we can actually then do is we can go here and we can enter with our suser password. Let me just find that one, just a sec. And it says nobody, so there's something wrong with this password I got here. Okay, so it seems like the username here is or my user has been blocked for a period of time, so let's see if I can update it later. Good. What we have now, and let's just get back to the agenda here, what I wanted to show was, so okay, now we have connected to Cloud Integration. Let's talk about the landscape and the setup that we have here in the tool. So here on the landscape, we do have right now one that is sample development. If we want to look at this, we can go in here and we can look at what is set up for this scenario. So what we can see here is we have a landscape with 2 elements, and we have, when we are creating this default landscape, we are coming with some prefixes for how this would look. And then you can go in and define what you want to achieve after you do any kind of scenarios for this. Do we want to do naming validation? Do we want to require approvals? Who should do that? And do we want to restrict access to some specific developers to be able to manage this? Then we have a section about naming prefixes. So if we are taking an update from our development system, how should this be translated into the new landscape? This is really useful if you, for instance, are reusing the dev system both for dev and for QA. Then it will add the prefix, postfix, or whatever you set up to do, and you do not need to do anything with this. And this means that no matter if you're doing a transport on the same system, like normally you'll go in and say copy iflow, then it will just work without you having to do anything. So it will give you a transport, you will have approval like normally. And then you can obviously also remove these prefixes, so when you're going from the QA to the production. But let's create one here from this demo here. So we will select 2 tenants. So obviously right now we only have this one tenant on the system because the other one is not connected yet. So let's call it dev, and here we'll call it QA. But because I probably already have a number of QA on this, I will just call it demo. So we know that this is related to this. So this is my first step, to define my landscape. What are all the different steps and iterations in this? Well, let's just add back to line configuration. So if you are still here, you can only add these items. Let's actually see here. We can production. We'll add it as production, the new QA tenant. And when we do that, we can then see what is the process that this will then have. So first, after deploy, we will be adding these name. So from dev to our virtual dev, we'll add a prefix called QA demo. There's some URLs that will get this and some prefixes. And then when we look at the QA, it will then remove these prefixes. You can go in manually and replace these if you do not like the way we have set this up and you have your own idea. There's a lot of ways you can handle this transition between the landscapes. Naming validation is a little more complicated. Approval is really nice to set up. And you can define if it's only approval that needs to do that can import, or everybody that has access to handle this can work with the scenarios. You can make a snapshot of the configuration before the approval. So there is, if you have a large volume of changes on the system, it may be a good idea that you take snapshots so you know this is what I've approved, because sometimes there can be users that in a different transport would configure these things. So this is what this is for. Then we have host names replacement. So this is also one of the nice features when you're doing transport. So say you have a host name pod figaf.com. If you then have to translate it to my QA and then need to poq at figaf.com, so my PI systems. So this will give us access to translate between these different systems. And then I go on also on the link between QA and production, and here I'll then put pop at figaf.com. That means that when we're doing our first transport here too, it will add this, change it to POP, and then when we're going from POP from here to the new, it will then replace it again, making the transition much smoother as a process for you. We have different options if there's something that you do not want people to translate. It could be value mappings, it could be a specific tag. So all objects can be tagged, and that means that you can say, okay, this is something of a strange scenario, so users should not be able to tag that or transport it. We have webhooks scenario, so if you want to integrate with Jira, with ServiceNow, with some other solution, this would be a good way that you can do this. So whenever a transport is created, it will trigger a webhook that you can then route to the CPI system that will then trigger the forward it to somewhere else. Or you could set it up, there's also APIs the other direction, where you from Jira can say, okay, once the user have approved for the ticket in QA, we can then move it on. So once you're done, you will click create configuration, you will press save. Here it will come with a lot of saying what is actually being created. Once you have saved it, you cannot make change. There's some changes you cannot make because it is all managed in this format. Okay, so if we go back to our landscape, we can now see we have these two landscapes on, and let's just also delete our sample one because we do not need it because we have created our own. Good. So I think the next part was to create actually a test case on this. So here we have an iFlow, and we have a number of different options to create test cases for it. One way I'll show you is that we can create here a test case. We will put it into a test suite. Training. We can give it a name. Training. We can set up what type it is. We can say, okay, we want to upload some messages for this. So we'll upload two messages. One is the inbound and one is the outbound. And we can select anyone. So I will just select. Let's just take this SAP partner as the input and the same for the output. Not really good test data, but obviously you would have some better test data that you could actually connect to this and use as a way to get started with it. I can now create a test case. So it needs to be connected here. So we have a group. You can define multiple different scenarios when working with this. And let's just say we want all of these different steps. We need licenses. License created. And then when I can see here, we have the data here. I can run it. And when I run it, we will send the message in to the system for that scenario. It will move it into trace mode first, and then it will trigger it. If it is a scenario that we can trigger, some HTTP based scenarios, most of them we can trigger. GMS, process direct. That would require some proxies that you need to deploy on the systems. So definitely something's going on with the authentication system, which is hindering this, which is a little frustrating. Let's see if it is still a problem. I think it is. So if we go here to our landscape, we can see we have the new IS here. If I click test configuration, which seems like it is okay, but we are not checking the message sent process when we're dealing with this. So this could obviously be a problem or something that we missed out with this setting up here. That something is not working. So let's see if it started to run. We can run it from here also. So a test suite has a number of test cases under it. You can have messages that is in recording where you want to fetch messages from the system, and this is the standard process for running these scenarios. So now it seems like the message has been processed. we can see we are getting a lot of output messages coming out from this process, which is expected because we just had an input and a lot of strange output. So what we will actually need to do is we want to say, okay, based on the input, we would expect all of these output messages to occur. And that means that if I go here, I can update the test case, drop all messages, and I think we should select it like this without the... So now we have a new test case, and if we try to run it again. So whenever you're creating test cases, it's a lot about running it and checking out what you're actually going to experience from this scenario. And if we then open here, we can obviously see what is going on with our landscape. We have configuration with CPI helper. Here we can see that the message has been sent in on this interface. If we refresh here, we can see there's a polling in place that will, and so the way is the iFlow will split into trace mode. We will send messages through it. We would download all the different steps from it, and then we'll be able to see if this actually performs as we would expect it to do. Obviously that depends a little on the API and the performance of it, how long time it takes for this to process. It says it's done. So let's see the test configuration here. There's some different settings here. You can ignore certain elements, trim white spaces, but that should not really be a problem. The last person, so sometime maybe because of the the instability of the platform right now, it takes a little longer to fetch these messages. So probably we'll just need to run it again. So it's obviously easy to run, where you'll send the message in and then you'll get a result coming out. Oh yeah, we did not connect it to it here. So let's view the results. So an active is polling. See if it has found any messages. So now we are getting some messages coming back, and this is what we would expect it to do. But we are getting some errors. What are these errors? We can then open here the diff. So the easiest is just to filter by the step and get the highest number here, because that would be the one where you have most headers that are different. So there's an expire header and a date header. We can just ignore those. So these are things that are sent with the HTTP adapter, and we can then compress us a full comparison that will check all of these messages, and we'll then be able to see, hey, now everything is successful. It looks good, and we have a test case that shows what this payload is about, what we can actually do here in it. And then there's just to run it one more time, so we get a result that is in status success, or so meaning we have a successful baseline for it. There is different configurations that you can do when working with this. You can go in and say, okay, we want to mock the endpoints, where instead of then running it on the real system, it would run on a mock of this this iFlow. So let's try that. So say here, save, run, and now we can see it is, let's see, probably not successful yet. There are some jobs that runs and they would take some time for it to run. So now it is successful. So if I now run it, it will be a little more complicated, because the Figaf tool will need to update this new iFlow that has been created. And what you can see, it is actually here. We can see that it is creating this new iFlow. And if we compare it here, it is using an OData adapter 2.2 service odata.org. And if we look at this one, it is a URL that points to figaf.com. And this makes it a lot easier to test these scenarios, because you can always get the payloads. even after this has been processed, and it will obviously be in trace mode. And once the iFlow is successfully deployed, messages will be sent on it. We can check the status here if there's something going on here. It does check from time to time if the iFlow is started successfully, and then once it is started, it will then send the message on it. But there is two statuses. You have the started and you have the starting and started. Sometimes you can send messages on when it's started, but other time you need to do it when it is running. And maybe this is what we're waiting for. It's just the final confirmation before we can send the messages into this. One thing when we are talking about this is on the plugins page, you obviously have CPI Helper. It is one of the best plugins for CPI. What you need to do is you need to take the URL here you're having. If you're running it B2P, you obviously would need that URL. And then in here, you will then insert this URL here without the end and like this. That means that whenever you are pressing this synchronize, it will take this iFlow, move it into Figaf. And let's see that in a little bit. Now we can see that the messages has been processed here. And if we press refresh, we can see it's sent. And we can look at the results coming out here. So now there's some more errors. And we just need to check this diffs again. And this is because sometimes the adapters would behave differently. When we are mocking these, we do not have the option to set all of the camel headers, but this looks like pretty straightforward. Some Cloudflare, something that we do not need, so we'll just ignore all of those. We can process the comparison again, process full comparison. It will process these messages, and now we'll see everything looks successful except these parts down here. So let's see, check the diffs here. So there are some pragma and some content type. Let's also ignore this. So this is the iterative development of test cases that you would need to be doing when working with this. So now everything looks okay. So really a good way to go through creating test cases for this. So right now I have a test configuration here, and what we can see, it is using our mock endpoint and not sending data to the original receiver. If we want to have two test cases, one where we're using mock and one where we're not using mock, we can use this shared configuration. And here in the shared configuration, we can choose get customer mock. We can select a specific test case. It's this test case. It is this integration object. So whenever this test case is run on this integration object, it will use this this scenario. Test with mock data. So it's just a different way that you can run this and create two different test cases that is then run with different scenarios on. Just something that makes the development process a little simpler. Okay, so now we have a good understanding about how we can create test cases, how we can create multiple different test suites that is running and is being processed. Yes. So the next thing is we wanna, if we have a business request that we need to improve this this iFlow. So let's say we have this get customer here. So in here in the tracked object we can see all links up and down the ladder as a way to understand what is going on. We can see we have this artifact. If it was using some shared resources or external reference, we would also be able to see it here. We do have some Groovy scripts in it and some XSLTs. So this is an XSLT. What we can do is we have an IDE for this, but we need to enable this on the agent. So let's go back to our agent configuration. Enable IDE. for this. And now we can go back to our landscape, tracked objects. We can search here for XSLT. So here we have this create customer. We can open here the IDE. And now we have an IDE that we can run and use. But to make it even easier for you, you can select the test case. And you can select it like this. Let me just go into details on that. So you can select the test case. And you can select where in this XSLT you want to fetch the data from. So here we have input. We have all the headers at this point in time, and then we can run it. And we would actually be able to see what is going on and if it is producing something that is useful in this scenario. So here there's something wrong with it. We can also try to run it in our in a cloud environment or in CPI, if that is something that makes it easier to check if everything is successful here. So in general, the XSLT executors are a little different. Sometimes they work better, sometimes they work worse. And yeah, we need to deploy it first and then we're getting it. So there is something here that our standard XSLT translator does not understand for some reason, which is a little frustrating, but we can use it on this customer or on the BTP, and there it runs smoothly. So that's the reason we have two options here. So we will just make a modification here to the XSLT. Demo. And let's just run it again. So now we have created a customer run update here. Sometimes this bar makes it a little difficult to view. And we can then compare it and we can see we are actually getting a difference here. Here we do not have the full test capability, so we cannot make all the corrections to this. What I want to do is I want to upload this to the Figaf tool. So now it says we actually got a new version of it. And to make navigation easier, we do have here, if you are on the change tracking tool and find an object, you can click on it. This will take you to this iFlows page in the CTT. Here we can see if we open the resource, create the mapping, here we can see that we have updated this XSLT already in here. If I go edit, and I'll let him just do one small change here, change the date here. Save as version. So now we have a new version. We will deploy it. Actually, we should not deploy it, but anyway, let's just save it as a version more. So now we have 199 and 198 deployed. What we can do is we can synchronize here. This will synchronize this iFlow back into the Figaf tool. So now we should have a new version. So it does not remember the version that we skipped. So you only have 199. And then if you check versions here, we can see all the different versions that we have. And if we compare here, we can see where something was changed, and we can see it's up here. And we can see it was this constant that was changed here. So makes it really easy to see what is going on. We also have a diff here. We can see where something has been changed. And if I obviously had selected the one with the XSLT on, diff to HTML, we would then be able to see the changes in the XSLT. Making it a lot easier for you to document what is going on, what is the change that you see here. Okay, we have this landscape overview here, and this is pretty cool. Here we can see we have this iFlow. It is not in our other systems, and obviously this because we have not synchronized this neo tenant yet. We can see we're getting a notification here. It says, hey, you have a design time version, that's this, and a deploy time version, that's that. and that does not align with each other. And this is obviously really useful information when you are checking out your landscape. What is deployed? Is it the right thing? And you can see who did deploy it. If this is correct, they should be deploying things, or they have just been goofing around and making changes outside of the tooling. So that's the landscape report. Good. I told Seth that we wanted to give you a way to do DevOps, and DevOps is about being able to track the changes that you're making, test them in an efficient way, move them, and use that as a way to deliver your integration. So let's say here we have this iFlow. We will add it to a ticket. Demo ticket. We will select our landscape, and here we want to select the landscape from dev to QA. We will link it to our Jira number or ServiceNow number. This is not used, well, it is a way that you can integrate with the system, and obviously you can add more integration into it, but the idea is just that you have a way you can insert some data in here, making it easier to find this specific reason. So we do not need the actual connection, but we do need to have the scenario for it. So we can see we have these objects. We can attach all the dependent objects. So this is really useful if you have a lot of externalized objects like script collection, mappings, function libraries. Then all of those will be combined into this version. And we can see when these were last changed. We can then say, okay, we want to have this testing approach, and we can then say, okay, we want to use this test case. We already created. We want to run it, and we can say where we want to run it on our dev or QA system. And that means that all of the data that we already have makes it possible for running the integration. So if we'll check here, we can see the testing result just like we did with the other one. We can see it still runs on a Mac, and that means that it needs to update this version before it can deploy it and before it can run it. And obviously this is something that will take a little longer, and we can see here it is actually using this mock comparison operator that we created for this scenario. So now we can see the message has been processed. We are doing some comparison, and we did not use we did not add all our ignoring elements to it. So we will just need to go do this because they were not added to it. So here we can see that there was a difference in the XSLT, and this is, well, actually what we would expect to have in it, because there was a difference. We did make a modification to it. So we can rerun our comparison. Skip only successful. So now we can see we are getting much fewer problems. And there should obviously be somewhere else we need to go in and check the diffs here. Pragma expires. So now there's only 17. So now we just have this where we are. It is legitimate that we have made this change of these objects. So what we can actually do now is we will select all of this and we'll say, okay, let's update this. So next time we run it, this is our expected test result that we're getting here. So we do not want to get these messages again to see what is going on. And this just simplifies the process because that means you would always have valid test data that you can run, test, validate without having to spend a lot of time on setting up or just seeing if whether or not the test cases is valid, because developers will always go through and check everything is successful. And obviously, before you start development, you can run this test case also, and you can see, okay, is it successful or not? Is it because the platform was to him, so because someone had made a change? And you can also see that from the change tracking tool, where you can see, okay, this was changed. We do not have a ticket for it, but we can see it was Daniel that changed it. One thing here. So obviously, this is, I can understand my own name, but we can also make it a little easier to understand. So if we go to our user management, we do have here a name. What we can add is we can add this SAP usernames here. And that means if I go back here on the change tracking tool, all of these will be changed to Daniel, making it easier for me to see who have made these changes, and I can then investigate all the people on my team. I wanted to, so we were in the process of doing a transport, and what we can do is we can open from here. We can then see our last testing result is in error. I guess that's because we did not test from in here, but we tested directly in from the test case. So we'll just run it again, and later this will be successful. Now I can start a transport. Did I actually set up approvals? So when you're working with landscape, you will need to have approvals on. So let's just check here if we have an approval. So we cannot modify it from here. We can need to modify it from in here. So we do have an approval on. That means that Daniel need to approve this before it can be moved. You can also find the tickets here. So it's easy to open it. You will start the transport of this, and this will then create a transport entry that you can use to manage this specific instance. It figures out we need to transport this package also, and what you can then see here is you can go in here in the configuration. Here we can see, okay, this is the development iFlow and this is the QA iFlow. So here we can see it is adding the QA demo as a part of this, and we can see it is not on the target system. If we had updated these services to point to this, we would also be able to see that there was a problem with this. We can go in here and we can write the API key in production or in QA system. And if we, for instance, have one of these user credentials here that is not correct, we will get a warning saying, hey, you might want to check that this is actually existing on the system. So this is just a warning giving you information that you actually need to consider and work with this if that is important. But the idea is you will go through this as a developer. You will go and check all of these different changes that happens. You can also download all of this as a CSV. So there's a lot of CSV reports that will show you all of these parameters, and this is really a good sanity check to see what's going on, what are actually all the different parameters that we need from this. Good. I think I have configured everything I need for my transport. I'll send it to approval, and now I should probably also get an email saying there is a new approval that you need to approve, but I can say here it is waiting for approval, and normally obviously you should not be able to approve your own stuff. To make the demos easier, we can do that. What you need to do is just to approve or decline it if there is some valid reason for it. Let's just approve it. Super. And now as a user I can go in and I can import this into my landscape. So what it will do is it will import it, it will apply the configuration, it will deploy it if that was what we set up to do. We can see the process definition, what it started to do. It triggered the deployment of this transport was completed. So you have the full end-to-end life cycle as a part of this. We can roll it back if we do not want to do this. We can also see, okay, check the artifacts here, what actually is in our landscape. So we can see here it is called QA demo. We can see here the URL here. We are also adding a prefix as a part of this, so it will always just add this QA demo to the URL's process direct, making it possible for you to run all of this inside one container. So that is the process. Now we have transported an item into the QA environment. We will run our test and let the business users test on it. To import it into production, we simply just select new demo to prod, and it selects the landscape that you have, and then from here you can do the same kind of scenarios. So we do not have the correct landscape or the target environment set up, so we cannot start the transport. In here you can see the landscape overview. You can easily navigate between the different issues and transports that has been created in the landscape, making it a lot easier for you to handle and figure out what has been moved into production. And obviously you also have this landscape overview here. We can see this one has been improved. We can open the object here, and from here we can see the tickets that has been imported. So it is both in the old and the one into our productive system. So just giving you a lot of insight on what is going on with your system and how to deal with it. Good. I did promise you also to show you the monitoring capability, and we do have two components here. Well, a number of components. Let's take two of them. So we do have a monitor here that would allow you to monitor specific iFlows or statuses. So we can, or you can say, okay, let's just filter some specific iFlows. So let's set these, get customers iFlows, and save it. And this way I can get access to all these iFlows and see when they've been triggered. We have a way here to record the messages. So if you actually see something in here and says, this is a trace message, I want to create a test case for it, you can just use that. And this just simplifies the process of creating test cases for these scenarios. We can see that some of these uses application ID, some do not. I don't know if I made some changes or rolled back something for this. You can export all of this to a CSV. You can view the payloads, MPL attachment, persistent messages, all making it a complete view of what you have. And you can actually give business users access to specific tiles. So you can create a tile for the iFlows related to productive issues, and then they would be able to see those only. And you can give them access to payloads or not payloads, depending on the criticality or what they need to be able to do. We also have a alerting tool, and the idea here is that you'll create alert failed. Yeah, for this we do have a scheduling, send pull messages, and in this cloud version we do not have all the schedulers available because it puts a load on the system, and since it's just for trial, it is more something that you need to go in here manually and select pull whenever there's something on it. So we got 300 errors on the system, which, well, I guess for this purpose is good that we have something that has failed. We can go in, we can see this first error, something about some iFlow that is not failing or working. So we can go in and create a rule here. iFlow, it was number 40. So the iFlow will be triggered in order. You will then be able to test, will this work? What are the error messages that you will get here? For how long time do we want to ignore this? So is this important? Just set a new status as done for this. So this is a way to go through, figure out, does this relate, and what can we use this for? And then you will go through all the different rules. You can set up email alerts, webhooks, so I guess it's only this one we're having. Multiple pages. Sometimes it says it has been triggering some messages. I guess this is if it is the first one or one within that period of time of that 3 hours. That it is processing, and I think there's some limits on it. Normally this would run every 5 minutes, and then it will send you the alerts that you're getting, filtering them and sending them directly to the people that this is relevant for. So here we can then see the rules that are coming out and see the messages that is being triggered. So this was what I wanted to cover in this. The last caveat, I guess, this is our Neo to Cloud Foundry migration. This would allow you to translate from a Neo to an integration suite system. And this is really useful because it will use this landscape of transport landscape, making it easier for you to configure, apply changes in this process. And I think that's one of the things that you would need to be efficient on it. And if you're using this virtual tenant, it also makes it a lot easier for you to get started with the tooling, having fully functional processes in place for this. So I hope you enjoyed this course, so you can see all the benefits of how to get started with Figaf. What is it that it can do to simplify the way you are delivering your integration. There is a lot more you can get into when working with this, making it the process a lot easier, and there's tons and tons of more details you can apply as you get to work more with these scenarios. So I hope you want to enjoy this, try it out, like the video, subscribe, and do obviously sign up for the trial.